It's funny how your whole life can shatter in an instant. One minute, you're smiling at the people you've known your entire life, surrounded by the comforting sounds of family and familiarity. And the next, you're standing in the center of the storm, feeling every eye on you as the truth unravels in the most public, humiliating way imaginable. I had always trusted him. I had always trusted her. My husband and my cousin, the two people who should have protected me, instead became the architects of my betrayal. And when the truth came out at the family reunion, my husband didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He smirked as if he had won some twisted game. But he had no idea who he was playing with. It started like any other family reunion. Loud laughter, kids running through the backyard, the clink of glasses as my parents toasted to another year together. I stood by the grill helping my dad flip burgers while my husband, Ryan, was across the lawn talking to my cousin Emma. Emma had always been the golden girl of the family. Beautiful, charming, the one who could do no wrong. Even growing up, I always felt like I stood in her shadow. Where she was magnetic and captivating, I was practical and steady. But I didn't mind. I wasn't competing with her. We were family. Or at least I thought we were. Ryan and Emma sure are close these days, my sister Laura said as she passed by me, her voice low enough that no one else could hear. I looked over to where Ryan and Emma stood beneath the oak tree, their heads close together, laughing about something. Ryan's hand brushed her arm in a way that made my stomach tighten uncomfortably. I forced a smile. They've always been close, I said. Laura's eyes darkened. Not that close. A part of me knew. A part of me had always known. The late-night meetings at work that never added up. The way Emma suddenly knew things about Ryan that I hadn't even told her. The way Ryan would pull away from me at night, his mind clearly elsewhere. But I was too afraid to say it out loud. Too afraid to face what it would mean. I should have paid more attention to the way Emma looked at him. The way he looked at her. And then it happened. Why don't we say a few words? My mother's voice carried across the yard, cheerful and bright. Let's raise a glass to family. Glasses lifted into the air and my father smiled at me. To Ryan and Lily, the perfect couple. I forced a smile. Ryan reached for my hand but I pulled away, feeling the weight of suspicion pressing down on my chest. And that's when Laura's voice cut through the celebration like a knife. Oh, you mean Ryan and Emma? A murmur passed through the crowd. Confused glances turned toward my cousin and my husband. Emma's face paled. Ryan's smirk deepened. What are you talking about? I said, my voice steady despite the growing pressure in my chest. Laura's eyes narrowed. You really don't know? My father frowned. Know what? That Ryan has been sleeping with Emma for the past 6 months. The sound of glass shattering echoed through the air as someone dropped their drink. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. I stared at Ryan, my body frozen. My ears rang. I felt my pulse hammering in my skull. Emma's eyes widened. Laura. Don't bother denying it, Laura snapped. I saw you too. Multiple times. You weren't even trying to hide it. Ryan stepped forward, his expression calm. Well, he said, his voice cold, I guess there's no point in keeping it quiet anymore. A collective gasp rippled through the family. Ryan. My voice was barely more than a whisper. His mouth curved into a smirk. I'm leaving you, Lily. For Emma. Emma's eyes widened. Ryan. But he didn't even look at her. He was watching me, waiting for me to break, waiting for me to cry or scream or crumble beneath the weight of his betrayal. I could feel my family's eyes on me, the judgment, the pity. I could feel the heat of humiliation crawling up my skin. But I didn't give him the satisfaction. Instead, I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that made his smirk fade. Congratulations, I said softly. You're going to regret this. Ryan's brow creased. What? I stepped closer to him, my voice low enough that only he could hear. You might think you've won. But you have no idea what you've just set in motion. His eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I leaned in, my mouth inches from his ear. Watch and see. I turned and walked away, ignoring the sound of Emma calling after me. The whispers followed me as I crossed the yard toward the house. I knew what they were thinking. Poor Lily. Humiliated in front of everyone. Left for her own cousin. Let them think that. Let Ryan think he had the upper hand. Because by the time I was finished, he wouldn't even recognize the life he had once known. I sat in the darkened corner of my bedroom that night, my phone resting on my lap. I could have called my mother. I could have called Laura. But instead I dialed a different number, one I hadn't used in years. A smooth voice answered on the second ring. Lily. I smiled coldly. I need a favor. The voice on the other end chuckled softly. Of course you do. Ryan thought he could humiliate me and walk away untouched. He was wrong. He was about to find out exactly what happens when you cross the wrong woman. Betrayal changes you. It strips you down, tears you apart, and leaves you standing at the edge of a cliff, forced to decide whether you'll let yourself fall or take a step back and learn how to fly. Ryan thought I would crumble. He thought I would beg him to stay, cry in front of my family, and humiliate myself even further. He didn't realize that the moment he betrayed me, the moment he smirked at me like he had won, he unlocked something dangerous inside of me. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to burn his life to the ground. I woke up the morning after the reunion with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The ache in my chest was still there, the sting of betrayal and humiliation, but it was no longer controlling me. I was in control now. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Laura. I answered, holding the phone to my ear. What? Are you okay? Laura's voice was cautious. I'm fine, I said, slipping out of bed and pulling on a sweater. Why wouldn't I be? Laura snorted. You were publicly humiliated in front of our entire family yesterday. Yeah, I said, tying my hair into a loose bun. And? There was a pause. Wait, are you actually okay? I'm better than okay. What are you planning? I smiled faintly. Oh, you'll see. I hung up and walked toward the window, looking out at the quiet street below. Ryan's things were still in the closet. His suit still hung neatly on the rack. His cologne lingered in the air. Not for long. I walked over to the closet, grabbed a suitcase from the top shelf and started packing his things. Suit after suit, tie after tie, each carefully folded and placed in the suitcase. I pulled his expensive cologne bottle off the dresser and tossed it into the bag with a careless flick of my wrist. When I was finished, I dragged the suitcase down the stairs and left it by the front door. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Emma. Of course it was. I let the call go to voicemail. A moment later, a text popped up. Emma, we need to talk. I rolled my eyes. There's nothing left to say. But I wasn't done with Emma yet. No, Emma was going to suffer too. For now, I had bigger plans. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table. Then I opened my laptop and began typing. I knew exactly where to start. Ryan worked for one of the largest investment firms in the city. He was a rising star, well known for closing high-stakes deals and charming his way through boardrooms. His reputation was spotless. Or at least it had been. A few years ago, Ryan had come home one night drunk and careless, and mentioned a few things he never should have said out loud. Insider information about company stocks. Shady business practices. Potential fraud. He thought I hadn't been paying attention. He thought I'd been too distracted by cooking dinner to hear him. He was wrong. I had recorded the conversation on my phone, filed it away and never mentioned it again. Till now. I pulled up the file and attached it to an anonymous email. Then I typed the subject line. Internal misconduct and potential fraud at Hastings Investments. I sent it directly to the board of directors and the SEC. Then I sat back and took a sip of coffee, feeling the satisfying burn of bitterness slide down my throat. A part of me almost felt guilty. Almost. But then I remembered the way Ryan had smirked at me when he announced he was leaving me for Emma, as if I were the joke. And suddenly I didn't feel guilty anymore. 2 hours later there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Ryan standing there, looking annoyingly perfect as always in his tailored navy suit. His smile was relaxed, almost condescending. When he saw the packed suitcase his smile faltered. Lily, he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. We should talk. I crossed my arms. There's nothing left to talk about. Ryan smiled faintly. Come on, don't be like that. You're making this harder than it needs to be. My eyes narrowed. I'm making this harder? You knew things weren't great between us, Ryan said smoothly. We were drifting apart for months. Oh, I see, I said coolly. And screwing my cousin was your solution? Ryan's smile vanished. It wasn't like that. Really? Because it looked exactly like that from where I was standing. Ryan stepped closer, his hand brushing my arm. Look, Lily, I still care about you. But Emma and it just happened. I pulled my arm away. It didn't just happen. It was a choice. Repeated choices. Ryan's jaw tightened. Fine. If you want to play the victim. I'm not playing anything, I said coldly. I'm just getting started. He scoffed. You're not going to do anything, Lily. You're too soft. You've always been too nice. I smiled. You really think so? Ryan's phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket and glanced at the screen. His face paled. What? I asked innocently. Ryan's hand tightened around his phone. I need to go. I stepped aside. Of course. He stalked toward the door, suitcase in hand, and I followed him to the threshold. As he stepped outside, I leaned against the doorframe. Oh, I said casually. You might want to check your inbox. I hear the SEC is very thorough when it comes to investigating financial fraud. Ryan froze. He turned, his face tight with disbelief. What did you do? I smiled. Like I said, I'm just getting started. The fallout began almost immediately. The investment firm suspended Ryan pending investigation. His accounts were frozen. His emails were seized. Reporters started sniffing around, and whispers about illegal trades and insider information began circulating. And Ryan wasn't the only one dealing with consequences. Emma worked for a luxury marketing firm, a firm with very strict policies about personal conduct and reputational damage. When news broke that she had been sleeping with a married man, who was now facing an SEC investigation, her boss called her into the office. She lost her biggest client that afternoon. Emma called me that night. Lily, her voice was shaky. Did you do this? I smiled, holding the phone to my ear. You mean, did I ruin your life the way you tried to ruin mine? Ryan's being investigated, she whispered. His career. Destroyed, I finished. And yours is next. Why are you doing this? Because you betrayed me. My voice was sharp. And now you're paying the price. Emma's breath hitched. Lily. I hope it was worth it. I hung up. The next day I met with Laura at a rooftop bar downtown. To revenge, Laura said, raising her glass. To revenge, I agreed. Laura smirked. You really did it. You tore him apart. I smiled faintly. And I'm not done yet. Laura's eyes widened. Oh. There's still more to come, I said, swirling the drink in my hand. Ryan took everything from me. Now I'm going to take everything from him. Laura's smile sharpened. What's next? I leaned forward, my eyes glittering with cold satisfaction. Let's just say Ryan's fall was the opening act. The main event. I smiled darkly. That's going to be spectacular. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I found that it's even better when it's served slowly. Ryan and Emma's lives were already starting to crumble. His career was slipping through his fingers, and Emma's professional reputation was tarnished beyond repair. But I wasn't finished yet. No, this was only the beginning. The satisfaction I felt watching them suffer was almost intoxicating. But I wasn't just doing this for revenge. I was doing this to reclaim my power. To remind them and myself that I wasn't weak. That I wasn't someone they could walk over and leave behind. I was about to show them exactly what happens when you betray the wrong woman. 2 weeks later, Ryan's career was on life support. The SEC investigation had leaked to the press, and the company's stock was tanking. Ryan had been suspended without pay pending the outcome of the investigation. Investors were furious, and the board of directors had already begun scrambling to distance themselves from him. Emma wasn't faring much better. Her largest client had already dropped her firm. Her boss was furious about the negative press, not just because of the affair but because of how public it had become. After all, it wasn't every day that the words insider trading and married man were plastered across the business section of the Times. And yet, despite all of it, Ryan still thought he could win. Because Ryan was arrogant. He believed that his charm and influence would save him. He thought he could smooth talk his way out of anything. But that's where he made his biggest mistake. Because I wasn't done with him yet. I was sitting at a quiet corner table in an upscale downtown bar when he showed up. Lily. I looked up from my glass of wine to see Ryan standing there, looking more tired and disheveled than I had ever seen him. His suit was wrinkled and there were dark shadows beneath his eyes. I didn't bother standing up. Ryan. Can we talk? He sat down across from me without waiting for an invitation. I took a slow sip of wine and set the glass down. Shouldn't you be talking to your lawyer? Ryan's jaw tightened. I know you did this. I smiled faintly. Did what? You leaked that information to the SEC, Ryan hissed. Don't pretend you didn't. I tilted my head, feigning innocence. If you hadn't broken the law, there wouldn't have been anything to leak, would there? His eyes darkened. You think you're smart, don't you? Oh, I don't think I'm smart. I leaned forward, my voice soft and dangerous. I know I am. Ryan's gaze sharpened. Fine, he said, his voice low. You had your fun. But you need to back off now. Or what? I smiled. You'll cheat on me again? Ryan's face twisted with anger. Emma and I are over. I finished. Ryan's mouth tightened. I laughed. Oh, poor Ryan. Let me guess. Emma left when things started getting difficult. He didn't answer. My smile widened. Let me give you some free advice. Next time, don't screw your wife's cousin. It tends to get messy. Ryan's hand clenched into a fist on the table. This isn't over. Oh, yes it is. I stood, picking up my glass of wine. You just don't realize it yet. As I walked toward the door, I paused and glanced back over my shoulder. Oh, and Ryan? He lifted his head. I haven't even gotten started on Emma yet. 1 week later. The first headline broke on a Tuesday morning. Hastings Investments Scandal. Insider Trading Investigation Expands. The second came the next day. Emma Covington's luxury marketing firm under fire for scandal ties. And then the third. Ryan Hastings and Emma Covington. Power couple or cautionary tale? I watched the fallout unfold from the comfort of my couch, sipping coffee while the news anchors discussed the growing scandal. Emma's firm released a statement distancing itself from her, and clients began jumping ship. Ryan's career was finished. The board of directors fired him that Friday, stripping him of his stock options and issuing a public statement condemning his behavior. Ryan and Emma were over. Publicly. Privately. Completely. 2 weeks later. Emma's social media accounts had gone quiet. Her name was barely circulating anymore in the marketing world. The firms that once fought over her were now pretending they'd never heard of her. And Ryan was barely holding on. The firm had cut him loose, and his accounts were still frozen as the SEC investigation continued. His professional contacts were avoiding his calls. Me. I was thriving. I sat at my desk in my new office. Yes, my office. Overlooking the skyline. I had taken a new job with one of Ryan's competitors, a direct rival to the firm he had disgraced. The offer had come shortly after the scandal broke. Apparently, taking down Ryan had made me something of a legend. I leaned back in my chair and smiled. My assistant knocked gently at the door. Miss Lawson. I turned. Yes. There's someone here to see you. I raised an eyebrow. Who? The assistant hesitated. Emma Covington. I smiled. Send her in. A moment later, Emma walked into my office, looking like a shadow of her former self. Her hair was pulled into a tight bun and her makeup was barely there. The designer trench coat she wore was too big for her, like she had lost weight in the last few weeks. Emma sat down across from me, her eyes dark and tired. I suppose you think this is funny, she said flatly. I leaned forward, folding my hands beneath my chin. Why would I think it's funny? Emma's eyes burned. You destroyed my life. No, I said softly. You destroyed your life. I just helped speed up the process. Emma's mouth trembled. Ryan is talking about leaving the city. He can't find work anywhere. And? Her hands curled into fists. You made sure of that? Yes. I smiled faintly. I did. Emma's eyes glittered with tears. Why? Why go this far? I stood and walked toward the window looking out over the city. Because you betrayed me. Emma's breath hitched. You could have had anyone, I said, turning toward her. But you wanted what was mine. You wanted to take Ryan, not because you loved him but because you wanted to prove you could take something from me. Emma's lip curled. Ryan never loved you. I smiled. And yet you're the one sitting in my office asking for mercy. Emma's face hardened. What do you want from me? I walked toward her, leaning down so that our faces were level. I want you to disappear, I said softly. Leave the city. Walk away from everything. And never contact me again. Emma's eyes narrowed. Or what? I smiled. Or I'll make sure the next article about you isn't just about a scandal, it'll be about criminal charges. Emma's face paled. You're bluffing. I leaned closer. Try me. Emma stood. You're a real bitch, you know that? I smiled coldly. You have no idea. Emma turned and stalked toward the door. Oh, and Emma? I called after her. She stopped. You'll never be welcome at another family reunion again, I said with a smile. I made sure of that. Emma's shoulders stiffened before she disappeared through the door. Later that evening, I was pouring myself a glass of red wine when my phone buzzed. Ryan. I ignored it. 2 minutes later it buzzed again. This time I answered. What? Can we meet? Ryan's voice was strained. No. Lily, please, he said, his voice rough. I need to talk to you. I sighed. Fine. One drink. I met him at a quiet bar downtown. Ryan was already sitting at a booth in the back, nursing a whiskey. He looked tired. Hollow. The cocky arrogance that once defined him was gone. He stood when I arrived. Thank you for coming. Don't thank me yet. I sat across from him. Ryan studied me carefully. You look different. I smiled faintly. That's because I'm not the same woman you married. Ryan's mouth tightened. I made a mistake. No, I said sharply. You made a choice. 1,000 choices. Don't sit here and pretend that what you did was a moment of weakness. Ryan exhaled. I thought I was in love with her. I laughed softly. No, you thought she was convenient. Easy. Ryan's hand tightened around the glass. Maybe I didn't deserve you. You didn't. Ryan's eyes lifted toward mine. But I still miss you. I raised an eyebrow. That's not my problem. His gaze darkened. What if I said I wanted to fix things? I smiled. I'd say you're an idiot. Ryan's hand reached across the table, brushing my fingers. You really don't feel anything for me anymore? I lifted my hand away. No. Ryan's jaw tightened. I still love you. I tilted my head. You love me? Yes. His voice was low, desperate. I leaned forward, my voice soft and cold. Then why did you sleep with my cousin? Ryan's face twisted. That's what I thought. I stood. Goodbye, Ryan. I turned and walked toward the door. Lily. I stopped but didn't turn around. What do you want? Ryan's voice was strained. What do you want from me? I smiled. Nothing. Ryan's face paled. Nothing. I stepped toward him, close enough that I could feel his breath against my skin. I don't want your love, I whispered. I don't want your apology. And I sure as hell don't want you. Ryan's breath hitched. Because the moment you betrayed me, I said, my voice like ice, you stopped being worth my time. I walked out and didn't look back. The next morning, Emma left the city. I had my assistant confirm it. Ryan tried to reach me again. More texts, more calls. But I blocked his number. I walked into my office that morning, head held high, as my assistant handed me a fresh report. We landed the Hastings account, she said with a smile. I smiled back. Good. Ryan thought he could ruin me. He thought he could humiliate me and walk away unscathed. But now I had his job, his reputation, and his dignity under my heel. And the best part? I didn't even want it. They thought they could break me, but I wasn't the one who ended up broken. I had won. And I wasn't looking back. Betrayal cuts deep, but it also has a strange way of setting you free. Ryan and Emma were gone. Their lives were in pieces, their reputations destroyed. And yet, as I stood on the other side of the wreckage, I realized something surprising. I wasn't angry anymore. I had burned down the house they built on my back, and now I stood in the ashes with nothing left to hold me back. No guilt. No resentment. No weight on my chest. For the first time in years I could breathe. And for the first time in my life, I was truly free. 6 months later, the sound of the ocean waves crashed against the shore, rhythmic and steady. I stood barefoot at the edge of the sand, the salt wind curling through my hair as the tide swept over my toes. 6 months. 6 months since I torched the life Ryan and Emma thought they could build on my humiliation. 6 months since I packed up my apartment, sold the house, and left it all behind. I didn't know exactly when the anger had faded. Somewhere between the third and fourth headline, somewhere between the emails confirming Ryan had been fired and Emma had lost her clients, the rage had begun to slip away. It was like setting down a heavy bag I didn't realize I had been carrying for years. And once I set it down, I never picked it up again. I had walked away from all of it. The marriage, the betrayal, the drama. I took my severance from the firm and accepted a new job at a small consulting firm across the country. No one knew me here. No one knew the story. I was no longer Lily Hastings, the wife who got cheated on. I was just Lily. And that was enough. I breathed in the salty air and closed my eyes. My bare feet sank into the sand as the waves kissed the shore. You're miles away. I opened my eyes and turned toward the voice. Grayson Bennett stood a few feet away, hands in the pockets of his gray linen pants, a slight smile curling at the edge of his mouth. His dark hair was swept back by the breeze, his green eyes soft beneath the golden glow of sunset. Grayson. We had met 2 months ago when I started consulting for one of his company's projects. He was quiet, understated, the opposite of Ryan in every possible way. Where Ryan had been loud and charming, Grayson was steady and calm. And for the first time in my life I found myself drawn toward calm. I was thinking, I said. Grayson walked toward me, stopping at my side. He glanced toward the ocean. About the past? No, I said honestly. For once, about the future. Grayson's smile widened slightly. Good. We stood there for a long time in comfortable silence, listening to the sound of the waves. His hand brushed against mine and I didn't pull away. His fingers slipped between mine, warm and steady. Still surprised me the ease of it. The quietness. The lack of effort. Ryan had always been work. The push and pull, the highs and lows. Loving him had felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, always wondering if the next gust of wind would send me over. Grayson wasn't a cliff. He was solid ground. I was thinking about taking the weekend off, Grayson said, his thumb tracing small circles against the back of my hand. Driving down the coast. I smiled faintly. Is that an invitation? Absolutely. I leaned my head against his shoulder. I think I'll accept. Grayson's arm wrapped around my waist. Good. Later that evening, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, a glass of wine in hand, the ocean breeze curling through the open doors. My phone buzzed on the table. I smiled and picked it up. How's paradise? Laura's voice teased through the line. It's good, I said. I saw the news, Laura said, her tone light. Ryan's still trying to repair his reputation. Apparently, he's considering starting a private consulting firm. I laughed softly. Let me guess, no one's hiring him? Nope. Laura's smile was clear in her voice. And Emma? Haven't heard a word. Think she'll try to come back? I doubt it, I said. She knows better. Laura was quiet for a moment. You really don't care anymore, do you? I smiled faintly. No. I really don't. Laura sighed. I don't know how you did it. If it were me, I'd still be slashing tires and keying cars. Oh, don't get me wrong, I said. I considered it. But honestly, yeah. Letting them ruin themselves was so much more satisfying. Laura laughed. That's my girl. We talked for a few more minutes before I hung up. I set the phone down and leaned back in my chair, watching the sky darken over the horizon. I had spent years trying to hold on to Ryan, convincing myself that if I was good enough, smart enough, loving enough, he wouldn't leave. But now I understood the truth. It had never been about me. It had always been about him. His insecurities, his selfishness, his inability to be satisfied. I hadn't failed him. He had failed me. And I had finally stopped letting that define me. The next morning, I woke to the sound of seagulls and sunlight streaming through the windows. Grayson was already awake, standing at the stove pouring coffee into 2 mugs. Morning, he said, his smile soft. Morning, I said, walking toward him. He handed me a mug and kissed my forehead. You sleep okay? Yeah, I said. I did. And it was true. For the first time in months, maybe years, I had slept without feeling the weight of doubt or fear pressing down on my chest. Hey, Grayson said softly. I glanced up. Yeah. His hand brushed a loose strand of hair behind my ear. His eyes were steady. You know you don't have to be strong all the time, right? I smiled faintly. I know. Grayson's eyes darkened. And you know you don't have to do everything alone? I took a slow breath. I know. He touched my cheek. Good. I kissed him, slow and deep, and felt the last fragments of bitterness dissolve into nothing. When we pulled apart, Grayson's hand slipped around my waist. Ready for the road trip? I smiled. Absolutely. 3 weeks later, I sat in a meeting room, presenting to one of the biggest clients of my career. The deal was locked in, the contract signed. The executives shook my hand and left the room with satisfied smiles. Laura texted me as I walked back to my office. Laura, so Ryan's firm just announced bankruptcy. Laura, karma's a bitch. Yes, it is. I dropped my phone into my bag and smiled as I stepped out of the building. Ryan's downfall had been satisfying, but it wasn't what defined me anymore. I wasn't the betrayed wife. I wasn't the woman left behind. I was Lily Lawson, successful, independent, untouchable. I slid my sunglasses onto my face and smiled as Grayson pulled up in his car, leaning casually out the window. Need a ride? I slipped into the passenger seat and smiled. No, I said. But I'll take one anyway. Ryan and Emma were ghosts now. Pieces of a past I no longer needed to carry. I had survived the storm. I had burned down the ruins. And now I was building something new. Stronger. Smarter. Untouchable. And I wasn't looking back. The end.